everybody, and welcome to BroomWagon. You will not get there on a road bike. Last episode of the year is always like this, always from a different location. Now I am in a library in the city center of a town where I usually come here for Christmas. And I'm super excited because it's going to be, as usual, an amazing one. But first of all, just remember that you can listen to this podcast all over the platforms, but you can also follow me on Calamaro CC and BroomWagon Podcast on the Instagram, or go down in the description below and drop a couple of coins in the coffee link. Or, last thing, just put a 5-star rating here for this podcast, or just follow me. And the best thing that you can do is actually to share it with a friend. Personal sharing is always the same. I'm gonna finish the season with this episode, and talking about season number 7 is off. I'm already planning something amazing for 2025, and it's gonna be season number 8. Woof, it's already a big mile. I mean, looking back, this season number 7 has been a bit of up and downs, but amazing people were here. Amazing people like Sai from Cotic that is going to be in this episode today. We started with an awesome frame builder, producer of amazing metal bikes at the beginning of the season, and I'm talking about Dom Mason, and we're finishing everything with Sai from Cotic, still UK, still frame building. In the middle, we got also Dan Craven and his amazing Onguza bikes. But that's it. Sai is going to walk us through his awesome concept of sustainability, but also inclusion on bikes. Everything with an awesome, incredible, cool, steel mountain bike. You will not get there on a road bike, don't you? So we are here, and I hate the fact that I'm starting all my conversation with so we're starting another way. Good morning, everybody. I'm super happy here to be together to make this thing happening today, this thing that is called actually podcast recording, together with Sai from Cotic. And we're going to talk a lot about off-road cycling, on-road cycling, but mostly experience. And how cool is the fact that now we're talking so much about the culture of off-road cycling in UK lately. We started with Dom Mason, of course, talking about building bikes and everything. And now we are keeping on with Sai. Super excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
No, yeah, it's super great. Maybe a bit of backstory. After the first recording that we did with Dom, Sai was super kind to tell me, look, Stefano, do we want to do also something together? And actually, because Cotic is such an established and full of super cool story about off-road cycling, I said, yes, straight away. It took us a bit of time because of my messy life at the moment in order to find the time and to sit down now and talk about cycling. But I'm happy that this is going to happen. So thanks again. And sorry for the mess again. I told you already offline and saying also online because I need to be apologetic on that.
No, it's like, let's talk bikes.
Let's talk bikes. So Sai, give us an intro about yourself. First of all, I have to say that your background is amazing. I can see some rally racing cars, some also trucks that are models, by the way.
Oh yeah. And so in my office here, I have my old Lego, and these are my racing radio control cars. I race vintage radio control cars. So.
And also this amazing, it's an illustration, right? And it's written there, Finale Ligure.
Finale Ligure, it's one of my favorite places, and that's just my wife bought me. My wife bought me like an artistic version of a trail map for my birthday because, man, I love Finale.
We all know where this conversation is going to go. I mean, Finale is kind of the mecca of gravity cycling, everything between trail riding / enduro riding, also some downhill trails are there. It's incredible. I think I need to talk with somebody from Finale soon because it's an amazing place there, and it's an amazing place where to talk about cycling.
It's amazing how it's become like a real like center, but and the town's got so behind it, and it's love that place.
Basically, it's a place where you go up to the trails, you start riding, you arrive directly to the sea. So basically, at a certain point, you're up to the mountains, and then you arrive straight to the sea, drinking your aperitivo without any problem.
It's one of my favorite things is that the trails don't actually go all the way back down into Finale. You tend to stop in the villages like at Calice and Foligno, and then you're uplifted back up again. But then at the end of the day, you roll down the road from maybe Caliche, and you're just rolling down the road, and the sun's there, and you're with your friends, and you've had this day riding, and you roll into Finalborgo, and you get a beer, and it's just my favorite thing. Just
now I want to go there. Now I want to bring me with you next time. No, but my mountain bike skills, maybe we're going to talk about that. My mountain bike skills are not really at the point to go to Finale, but that's another story. I think we're going to touch base on that. So, Sai, tell me more about you first, I would say.
Okay. Well, me, grew up I've lived in the UK all my life, born and bred, grew up down just a little bit north of London. And I've always ridden bikes, just always, learned to ride bikes and play around with my friends and stuff like that. But I've always there's just always been something about bikes that they've always been that thread through my life. I'm an 80s kid, so I had a BMX and I had a 10-speed and all of these kind of things that you have. But yeah, I think I just always enjoyed it, and I always kind of ranged out when I was young, and yeah, it's just that sense of freedom, I guess. And I think the other thing is that I was terrible at sports at school. I was a real nerd at school, so I was terrible. I hate team sports. I hate ball sports. I hate, anything to do with sport at school just didn't work for me. But I swam outside of school and I rode bikes and I skated. And but bikes was just something I was good at. It was just nice to be good at something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then these mountain bike things came along, and that was the real watershed moment. I got my first mountain bike in Christmas 1987. So I was 11, and it was this real rally mountain bike that they said I'd grow into, and I don't think I've ever had a bike with a higher top bar since. Absolutely hilarious seeing the photos of me, but I love that bike. I mean, that was it. I lived near some fields on the edge of the town, and me and my friends would just go crashing out through the fields, and then I got work experience in a bike shop, and those guys rode with a club. So I started riding with a club, and then I started racing, and and all my life I've wanted to design things as well. That's the other thread, is that I've always wanted to design things. I've always wanted to be an engineer. So those two things kind of came to, I started scribbling bits of bike parts and things like that. And then, eventually went to university. I have a mechanical engineering degree, and I joined the cycling club there, and I still to this day ride with guys who I met at universities. Like,
that's nice.
We've known each other 30 years, and we still go on holiday together, still ride bikes together. It's wonderful thing.
That's amazing.
And then I got a job on the railway, designing bits of trains. That was my first graduate job.
Wait a second. So you were designing bits of trains, not the full wagons, but
so I started with the bogies, so like the suspension and the wheel sets and things like that. So that was where I started, where I learned about vehicle dynamics, like spring dampers and simulations and all of that kind of stuff. And I learned so much from these old guys who'd been there for British Rail since like the 60s and 70s. Just wonderful, like, career engineers who really knew their stuff. And then I moved to another smaller design consultancy, and again, those guys, just amazing guys. But that was where I learned how to run a small business properly, because those guys were so open and so supportive. And the two guys who own it, Richard and Steve, Blueprint Rail, they're still two of the most inspiring guys I've ever met. And we actually had a work reunion, about 3-4 months ago.
Okay.
I hadn't seen those guys for like nearly 20 years, and it was so nice to see them all again. And
nice.
But right around the time I was doing that, I was designing my own bike, because I wanted I'd been downhill racing, and I stopped doing that because it got a bit scary for my liking as it all escalated in the early 2000s. I'm not really very good at jumping. I like going fast, but I'm not good at jumping.
Okay.
So I come out of downhilling, and I got into trail riding again. And I've always loved, I grew up with steel bikes, and I always loved the feel of that kind of bike. And I'd had some aluminium bikes, and I didn't really like them. But I'd had steel frames. I had this beautiful Greg Fuquay custom built for me with my summer job money at the university. So I had all of these steel bikes, and I was coming back into it saying, all right, I want a steel hardtail, but I want to put proper forks on it, and I want to put proper tires on it, and I want disc brakes on it. And this is like in 2001 or 2.
Okay.
And so I ended up buying an old Kona and kind of modifying it a bit, but it didn't have a rear disc mount, and it didn't really have enough tire clearance, and it was a bit small for me. So I kind of measured it up and redesigned it and laid it out how I wanted it. And I was just going to get one made, because there's also, back then there was this culture of custom builders in the UK where you could just get a few, so I was talking to this guy called Dave Yates, and anyway, I was on the Single Track World Forum at the time as well, one of the, early on in that. And I was talking about this bike and posting comments, and somebody who was a friend of Brant Richards, who was doing On One at the time, who were the first brand to do these small batch in Taiwan, direct to consumer kind of model of selling things. They put us together, and Brant sort of said, oh, hey, you've designed a bike. And it's sort of with a due sense of weariness of kind of, the amount of people who, you get sort of little sort of sketches going, oh, I've got this great idea for something, kind of thing. But I'd done like a full engineering drawing on CAD, because that's what I do. And he was like, oh, right. Oh, okay. And I don't know what possessed him, but he just said, well, we could get you a batch of 100 of these if you want.
It's going to cost you like 5.
Yeah, it's like, if you want,
basically.
it's like this is cool. You could do something with this. So I sat down, and so they got me a couple of samples, and the bikes were great. And a bunch of my mates rode them, and they were like, this is really good. And this is the original Cotic Soul, our first product. Yeah. So I sat down, and they gave me a price, and I basically worked out that I could get a loan to start the business. And because I wouldn't have to give up my day job, because we could set it up through a website, and I could answer emails and send them on it, and I'd take them to the post office on a Friday.
Absolutely.
Basically,
I know what you feel.
Basically, yes. It was almost like if we only sold 3, and it all went completely disastrous, I could still afford the loan back because I hadn't given up my day job. And that was the only business plan I had. It was literally like, it would be kind of fun, and even if it's a complete disaster, I can afford to pay the loan back. Okay. I was, for a long time when I started Cotic, I was completely clueless with business and things like that. So we started, and it went well, and we got a lot of good press. And then we introduced another couple of models that, again, bikes I wanted. This has always been this thread running through, is I design the bike I want to ride. I design my dream bike, and that tends to vibe with other people as well. So we'd done a couple of models, and it was actually going quite, it's still in my garage, but it was ticking along quite nicely in the background.
Okay.
And then my work got horrendously stressful. I got into a difficult situation with a project. And in the end, I just had to leave. I just quit. I can't do this anymore.
It was really too much for you.
My thought was, my first daughter had just been born. So I was like, my thought was I would go and get another job. It was actually my accountant that said, well, you do know you've got some money built up in Cotic, and you've probably got a year to try and make it happen if you just do that. And I was like,
okay.
Oh, that's how much of an idiot I was about business.
You didn't know, actually, exactly.
Really?
You didn't know, you didn't know that you had enough money in your bank account in order to invest.
Literally no idea.
That's awesome.
It was just a fun thing I was doing that got me cool bike bits. That was to that point, and that was in July 2006. So
after how many years?
3.
Okay.
So we started Cotic in 2003. So we've been going over 20 years now.
Nice.
And then I've been full time since 2006.
That's nice. I mean, that's exactly the stories, right? I mean, you do something because you want to have it. You still have energy because, I mean, for sure. I mean, we're talking about 20 years ago. You were younger.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of energy to do things, take your things aside from the job, and then deliveries on Friday and all these kind of things.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, that life drives you, or better, rides you in the direction of, it's time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've never regretted that decision. It's been bumpy at times for sure, but
of course.
I've always worked, because it started out being in my spare time. We've always worked flexibly. We've always worked from home, or then some days in the work. So that whole thing, it was kind of funny when COVID hit. We had the lockdown, and all my friends were like, "Oh, how are you finding it?" And it's like, just the same as usual. We all work at home anyway. We just started having a daily Zoom meeting, and that was it. It was like really, just didn't make operationally, it barely made any difference to us. Because we've always done it. But as a result of that, I got to spend so much more time with my kids, with them growing up, and actually, parent my children.
That's incredible.
And even now, I've probably spent more time with my kids than most dads get to spend. And my eldest is 18, and she's going to university in September. And I'm still thinking, God, I'm going to miss you. I still don't feel like I spent enough time with her, and I've done pretty well as dads go.
That's incredible. I mean, making some. Let's make this conversation. I mean, it's great, but actually growing up and having kids and everything, you really appreciate so much these kind of things. I feel I have myself. I mean, I'm exactly in the same situation now. As I was telling you, actually, our second kid just arrived, and actually having the possibility of myself. I mean, I say all the time that I have 3 jobs. I have my daily job that is actually the main resource of income. I would say that actually is my office job, but actually that company, and I joined them just for this reason. They set themselves up just since the beginning as a remote company.
Yeah.
So we have an office. I live in Zurich. We have an office here in city center. I can go there. I cannot go there. Nobody really cares so much. No. And we can actually slide something like get in the situation in working in the morning, early in the morning when the kids are still sleeping. That's what I do. Yeah. And then spending some time with the kids during the day, or doing some work, doing some other things that I do. And then in the afternoon, or when they're out, or when they are at the daycare, or when they sleep, I can work again. And that's so incredible, especially if you can then do it, you can still do properly. And because people now, of course, they're checking their emails most of the time. I have to say that I was a remote worker enthusiast since the beginning, since before actually 2020. But then now everybody's used to that. It's not something really sound, I would say, and healthy to be all the time in front of the computer, but also on the other side, not being on your computer, I would say 20 hours a day, but doing it in the time that you can do it. Why not?
Yeah, definitely.
It's incredible. And then you have also a lot of time that you can spend with your kids, or with your passion and everything. In my opinion, you're a better human, and that's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's nice. So let's go 1 second into that. So you have your daily job, your day job. You start, actually, you like bikes. You want to have your own bike. Then you had the opportunity to build up the brand.
Yeah.
I had already a couple of hints on that, because you said I wanted to build bicycles that I wanted to ride.
Yeah.
Right? What's the concept of that? So you went straight away. What were your 2, 3, 4 ideas that you had in mind when you started the company, and actually when you designed and you started commercializing your first bikes?
So the key thing with the Soul is I wasn't really starting with a clean sheet of paper. Basically, what I was doing was fixing what was wrong with the bike I already had.
The Kona.
The Kona. I had the last of the steel Konas, a 99 Caldera. But I'd put 100. It was designed around 80 mil forks, and I'd put 100 mil fork on it, and I'd put like a 80, 90 mil stem and riser bars on it, so it didn't really fit me because it was a bit too short, and it didn't have a disc brake mount on the back. And so I measured it up. I measured it all up, and I said, well, I definitely want it to use at least 100 mil fork, but the steering's kind of nice, but it's too short. So that's where the 70-degree head angle came from, which was a little bit slacker than was the norm back then. Sounds mad because that's like gravel bikes these days, but that was
absolutely.
Bikes were still 71 degrees back then. So. So it's a 70-degree head angle, but importantly, it's because I sort of understood suspension a bit. I designed that at ride height, whereas I think a lot of bikes were being designed with the forks at full extension. So when they dipped, the bike got even steeper and more nervous. There was a real time through like the late 90s and like early 2000s where bike handling was... I'm amazed we got anyone into the sport at that point. The bikes were so tragically bad.
Absolutely.
So anyway... So I said, right, so there's the front end fixed like that, but the BB needs to come down a little bit, and I need to tip the seat angle forward because that's got too far tipped back. I need to bring that back to 73. And then I need to stretch it all out in the middle to, because I want to keep the short stem. And it's hilarious talking about it in these ways now, because that sole that I designed to be my dream bike, I'm 6'3", it's tiny. It's too small for me, but it was just like the big leap of geometry that we did in mountain biking a few years ago just took so much pushing through received wisdom that even when I was sort of stretching a bike out, it was only by about sort of 20 or 30 mil. It wasn't like the big jump that it really needed to be. But anyway, so I tweaked that. Rear end was broadly the same as the Kona in terms of sort of length and shape and things like that, but it just had a disc brake mount and it had room for 2.5-inch tires. And the one bit that sort of became a sort of signature, even though we can't fit it on all the bikes anymore because of 29-inch wheels, but the wishbone seat stay. So the single tube coming out from the seat tube, and then the seat stays feeding into that. Yeah. It was always funny early on because I sort of, because I am an engineer and because I'd speak so sort of fluently and in detail about all of these little bits of the bike that are done, and they go, "Oh, well, what's the advantage of the wishbone seat stay?" I just like how it looks. It was literally, I remember those. I remember my Fuquay had one, and the old Bontrager's had them, and I just loved how they look, and that was literally the only kind of frivolously aesthetic part on the whole bike.
Love it.
So yeah, and I used the Reynolds 853 tubing because I'd had a lot of Reynolds bikes in the past, and I love that kind of British heritage of the tubing. And when I looked into it, I was used to using, sort of 20 millimeter thick mild steel plate in railway vehicles.
Yeah.
And then you've got this thing which is, this steel that's 5 times stronger than that and gets like stronger where, and gets harder where you weld it. I was like, this is like the new, screw carbon fiber. This is the new wonder material. This stuff's incredible. So I always used that from the start because I knew it would just bring me that kind of strength and durability where I could still get that lovely, like gorgeous kind of tactile sort of steel feel into the frame. And so that's it. And that was kind of the blueprint.
Yeah, absolutely. But then let's talk about that steel.
Yeah.
Steel is because of your experience and I would say love and heritage we're talking about trailways, right? So we're talking about trains. Because of these big machines that usually are made with this material, or you had something more about steel? Because I have to be completely sincere. I talk like a newbie. Everybody knows that my mountain bike skills and my mountain bike knowledge is not that much. Basically, it's not at all. But mountain bikes for me is aluminium, and carbon. Nothing else in between. There are just a few brands that are doing something different.
Well,
but
it's the same in everything. I mean, the thing is, it's nothing to do with trains, really. I learned a lot about detailed sort of design of getting a long life out of structures in terms of an engineering thing from trains. But the whole thing with steel for me came from bikes. I started on steel bikes. There were only steel bikes in the 80s. You know, when I started riding bikes, you know, my first mountain bike had Reynolds tubing. It was a Rally made in Nottingham, and it had Reynolds tubing. My first BMX was chromoly. You know, all of your bikes was aluminium became the hot thing in mountain bikes and road bikes in kind of the early to mid 90s.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And that was, and I did have an aluminium. I did get an aluminium hardtail for a while, but I didn't like the harshness. And obviously things have refined a lot over the years, but I didn't like the harshness of the ride. And the weight difference didn't seem that bothersome to me.
You're going down at the end of the day. I mean,
well,
now of course you go up as well. Yeah.
But I did have a titanium frame briefly. Well, it was all sorts of materials actually. It was a Rally Dynatech. So Rally, the British brand, before they were bought out in the late 90s and they offshored everything, they still made everything in the UK, even down to like, you know, kids' bikes and shopping bikes and everything. It was amazing. And they made this range of bikes in the early 90s where they bonded the frames together. So they were cast aluminium lugs, and then they would bond at titanium tubes in the front triangle, and then the rear triangle was steel, but it was brazed steel and then bonded into the lugs. So it was all this real mishmash. But it was the most beautiful, like soft riding bike. It just a fabulous feeling bike. So I always had this thing about these bikes that kind of that breathed with the trail, and they had this kind of give and go and that feel. And even when carbon was becoming a thing in the mid 90s, I always just was a huge fan of Bontrager's and the Richie's race team, like Thomas Frischnat and Henrik Jernys and those guys. They were all still riding like Richie Logic's, steel frames in World Cup racing and stuff. And I just loved all of that. It just spoke to me. So when I came. I mean, even my downhill bike, that was another Rally. I ended up knowing an engineer at Rally, and he did me a deal on their downhill bike. You sort of say, there's nothing new under the sun. That I was riding a 160mm travel 853 steel downhill bike 25 years ago.
Wow.
If you look up Rally DHO, you'll see it's got flames paint. It's like had airbrush flames paint job. It was awesome. I love that bike. But that was where the 853 thing came from, because I was like, holy cow, they've built a downhill bike out of this stuff. It must be good. Yeah. And that was the thing, is I wanted to get a hardtail when I came back into trail riding, and everything was aluminium then. And anything that was steel was really old school. It was still like really flexy and like horrible geometry and stuff. And I was like, no, I want that steel feel and look, and that beautiful look and the ride feel and the toughness and the durability and all of those things. But I want it in a modern bike. And that was it. It was never so it's an old school material, but modern. Absolutely. And that is the essence of Cotic. It's the traditional materials and methods, but always modern, always looking forward.
I mean, that's exactly what all the small producers and brands and everything that are working with steel or metals in general are doing, right? Because it seems like the evolution now is going just in one direction. That is, I'm going to say, I don't care, that is plastic. So it's carbon. So it seems like it's going everything in this direction. All the evolution, all the research and development, everything is going on that material. But there is still a lot more in metals to discover, or at least to make modern geometries with, as you were saying, an old school material.
Exactly, because if you use the traditional methods and you've not sunk 200,000 euros into carbon molds for this particular product that you've then got to recover the costs of over 3 years and however many thousand units. If I want to change the head angle of one of my model lines for the next batch, well, it happens like I can do that. I can have a prototype in a month, and I can change the next batch. Who can be here next year?
How big are your batches? How big are your batches usually?
From Taiwan, we get between 100 and 150, and we get 1 or 2 batches a year, depending on the thing. But we're onshoring more and more of our production, so we get a minimum of 100 from our friends in the Czech Republic who have started building for us for the steel hardtails. And we're on a rolling production of 4 frames a week with Fiveland, who build in the UK all of our dropping bikes.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. Yeah, because your gravel bikes are actually built here, right? There, I mean, in UK.
Yeah. No. All the gravel bikes are made in Taiwan at the moment. Apart from the very most recent, we did a limited UK edition of the Escapade. Very recently. But that's the first thing we've built in the UK. Okay. So, that's it. I don't know where I was going. I don't know whether I was going with that.
Let me then get, because I have another question. I actually interrupted you, so I can keep on the conversation. And my question is, we're talking about steel bikes, and we were talking about the first model. By the way, the Soul, you are not producing it anymore, right?
No.
Okay. No, you just evolved basically.
Wheel sizes killed it.
Okay.
So the Solaris, which is still in the range, is our 29er, like XC downcountry kind of hardtail. That was effectively the Soul 29. It was the sister model to the Soul when the Soul was still 26-inch wheels. The Solaris came out in 2012, and they ran parallel for many years. And the Soul grew 275 wheels when 26 wheels got killed by the industry. Yeah. But over time, things went more and more 29, to the point where by the end of 2019, the Soul was a beautiful, lightweight, XC Trail 27.5-inch hardtail, and that entire market has gone 29. But we already had the 29-inch product in the Solaris, so we couldn't take the Soul and call it the Soul 29. It would have been the same thing. So it was just so the reason why it died was simply lack of demand, and the fact that we already had effectively the Soul 29 in the range.
But maybe then, I don't know, maybe it could be that actually the Soul can, or if you have it already, I don't know, the Soul can actually still be in place for a mullet kind of version.
Maybe, but for those bikes, mullet, people don't want it for that kind of bike. We get people buying mullet options on things like the Rocket Max and maybe the Jet, like the Enduro, and like sort of bigger travel trail bikes. But
XC, you're right.
Sort of XC kind of trail riding. People just want the 29er. I mean, we just started a sale on the beefy 27.5-inch frame, which is the kind of hardcore hardtail 27.5-inch frame, and it'll be the last ones we do because the demand is so small that we just can't keep it in the range anymore. So these ones are going on sale, and once they're gone, that's it.
That's makes sense. Yeah. Talking about then evolutions of frames and evolution of products, you started with a hardtail.
Yeah.
And then now I can see that actually in your range you have many also full suspended and also something else that we're going to talk about. But staying on the mountain bike, how difficult, in your opinion, is to make a full suspended bike made of steel? I mean, also there. I'm ignorant completely. I mean, I'm the most stupid person probably talking about suspensions and stuff. But in my opinion, actually having a frame set with for mountain bikes that is actually full suspended in steel seems like a nonsense, because usually you have carbon or aluminum because of different capacities and properties of the material itself. How does it feel actually? And how do you feel is fitting actually into the full suspended world?
It fits because it fits for that steel's still a valid material for any bike. The interesting thing is that the received wisdom in terms of bicycle design and general vehicle with suspension design is you make the thing in the middle, the suspended mass, so if you're talking about cars or anything like that, you make that as stiff as possible so that the suspension works off it as effectively as possible with as minimal flex in the middle. And that's where all of these carbon and aluminium bikes kind of come from. The other thing is that aluminium, one of the reasons why aluminium is so prevalent in full suspension bike design is because it's so easy to do it. Aluminium, because you can machine big, you can do big machined pivots and parts, relatively easily and cheaply, or you can do forged parts, and you can shape the tubing real easily to go around pivots and things like that. It's much easier. And then obviously carbon, although it's much more expensive as a final product because of the amount of labor involved in actually producing it, again, it's relatively straightforward to design it because you can just put everything exactly where you want it. Whereas steel, it's much harder to manipulate the tubes. Big machine parts are expensive and potentially quite heavy. So you have to be careful about how you do it, definitely. But when you do it, it's not impossible, and it's when you do it, you get everything that you get out of a good steel gravel bike or road bike or hardtail in the full suspension bike. You get a bike that breathes with the trail, because the thing is that the missing piece of that whole stiff in the middle thing is that's only fine when you're looking at the side of the bike and the wheels are just going up and down.
Yes.
So think about mountain bikes. How often are you actually completely upright? If you're cornering, or if you've got the bike leant over running across a route strewn off camber, what's the suspension doing? The forces are going upwards and the suspension's pointing off to the side. It's not going to be working. So the only way you're getting grip is your wheel flex, your tires, and your frame flex. That frame give and go actually generates grip.
Yeah.
So, but it's also a horses for courses thing. Now, if you're in a big bike park situation, massive berms and like relatively smooth trail and loads of support, sometimes you can feel a Cotic, wind up a little bit and sort of come back at you. It's like, so it's not necessarily the best thing for massive berms and really high loaded, like sort of bike park riding. But you get off piste, you get into some rattly routes or like some sketchy corner where you need all the grip you can get. I guarantee you'll be generating more grip on a Cotic than you will on something made out of aluminium or carbon.
Okay.
So that's why making them out of steel is good. It's exactly the same reason why making anything out of steel, a bicycle out of steel, is good.
Absolutely. We know what we are talking about. Yes, I also love the metal and these kind of things. But then my question is, and I'm sorry if I will be too sharp for that, so if I'm too sharp, just stop me.
No.
For whom who's the classic user of a Cotic? Somebody who knows how to ride bikes, somebody who is, something like traditionally in love with the material, somebody who has different skills on the bike. Whom are you, apart from yourself, whom are you building your bikes for?
Our bikes are for it's a really tricky one because I don't particularly design bikes. I design bikes for people who love riding bikes.
That makes sense.
Because the thing about our bikes is that yes, the approach of the brand and the use of the material is unusual, but the bikes themselves aren't. So what I mean by that is we don't make bikes with 36-inch front wheels and 20-inch rear wheels and racks in the middle instead of on the back or anything like willfully strange. We make really flipping good mountain bikes and gravel bikes. They just happen to be steel.
Okay, makes sense.
So basically, what the person who would want to ride a Cotic is somebody who wants to stand away from the crowd, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Whilst we're not, I hate how the word exclusive has become a good thing. Because you're literally excluding people. Why is that
Absolutely.
good?
I have no reasons why.
I don't want to. So I don't want to say that they're exclusive because they're not. It's not like we limit supply or we turn people away or anything like that. But what I would say is for people, actually, I wrote a little bit about this the other week, and I'm going to blatantly crib David Miller and chapter 3's thing. Chapter 3's unfollow campaign really spoke to me, because one of the little lines he puts in there, he says, it's for people who are somebody, not anybody. And if you know, you know. And it's like, and that's it. It's like, if you want an amazing bike and you're really into riding bikes, but you don't just want another Santa Cruz or another Canyon or another Specialized, then there's this option which is and you're not being punished for taking the the different route. It's still a high performance option. It's still a great bike. It's got some advantages over those other bikes in terms of the way it rides and feels. There are pros and cons to everything, but there's, it's not like you're willfully riding something awful just to be different. You're riding an amazing bike, and you're riding something that's saying, I stand apart from that, because one of the reasons why we use steel is the environmental impact. It's the lowest impact material you can use to build a bike. Mm-hmm. There's 3 times as much carbon dioxide emitted building a carbon bike as building an aluminium bike, and steel's even better than that.
Okay.
It's fully recyclable. Carbon fiber is made out of fossil fuels.
Absolutely. It's
made
plastic.
out of fossil fuel. It's plastic and string, and you put it in the bin. You literally put it in landfill afterwards.
Yeah, that's true. No, absolutely.
The steel that we use, the Reynolds steel that we use, is 99% recycled when it comes to us. There's hardly any virgin material in.
So it's already recycled.
It's already used recycled material. The iron that they use is already recycled.
That's incredible.
So what you're saying when you buy a Cotic, aside from you're saying, I want to buy something that's got a different look, and I do want to be a little bit different and not part of the crowd and all of that kind of stuff. But it's also I hope it's a slightly more thoughtful choice, and it's a slightly kinder choice. That's mm-hmm. what I hope.
Yeah, it makes sense. And also, if I can put my 2 cents there, I mean, I went into different phases, and of course, when you do into different phases, usually you come back on the same circle, right? My actually first approach on cycling was that I wanted to have a steel bike and a steel road bike I had, and I used it for so much. Then it was not good anymore enough, because I didn't have at that time disc brakes and everything related to that. So I went for another bike, and it was actually a carbon bike, still my road bike. And now I have actually 2 carbon bikes, and this is the gravel bike and the road bike. By this saying, so I'm guilty for that. By this saying, there is also durability of the material and repairability of the material that when you go into steel is absolutely incomparable with everything else. Because I don't know how many people are doing it. Of course, I mean, you can also, if you want and if you are keen, also repair carbon if you want. I know people that do it, but how many people are doing it? Because the thing that actually they put in your head is, but you don't never know, it's not reliable anymore, and blah, blah, blah. With steel, if something cracks your frame, you'll still be able to repair it. And that's actually something like a look at the future. Of course, I think that actually now mountain bikes, they arrive at a certain point where they're really at their best of the game. I know that they can improve a bit more, but now I think that actually geometries and philosophy around it and everything is established already. So you can really get, if you want, a metal bike or a steel bike, in this case, mountain bike I'm talking, you can really keep it for a long time. If something happens because crashes or because you're traveling with it or blah, 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 you can still repair it. And that's an incredible point and also thinking that we're talking about weight before. We're talking about times when probably you have 3 chain rings in front and everything, and this was a bit weird, blah, blah, blah. Now, with the single chain ring in front and the range of gears that you have, even if it's a tiny bit heavier, you can still ride up wherever you want.
Absolutely, you can do that. And the thing is that the other thing that is that the steel, certainly our full suspension bikes, relatively speaking, they're not that heavy. This is the
Okay.
this is the other thing. Is like people think just because these bikes are you go and weigh a carbon enduro bike frame from one of the big brands, because they never give you the frame weights. They only weigh complete bikes because that's what they sell.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my friends did that with their it was a generation or so ago, but he weighed a Santa Cruz Nomad, and it weighed way over 4 kilos with the shock.
Wow.
And that's like,
No fork, only the shock.
What's that? No fork.
No fork.
Yeah, just frame and shock. And that,
Okay.
and that's kind of, it was not dissimilar weight to a Cotic steel frame.
Okay.
My friend brought in his transition aluminium frame to get the headset put in a couple of years ago. Way heavier than a Cotic frame.
Incredible.
And those frames are those two examples of frames that are great bikes, and they're super durable and things like that. But not buying steel because it's heavy it's a nonsense, and you can make so much difference by like sort of being thoughtful about your things like your wheel spec and things like that. That makes so much more difference to the feel of a bike than just the overall weight.
Yeah. If I can actually ask you and elaborate on one thing, because as I was saying, I tend to ask you a lot of questions, maybe on point, because just they're not clear for me, because as I was saying, my mountain bike skills are what they are. But you were mentioning actually that then probably the Cotic lineup and the Cotic bikes, they are not actually the best for bike parks and big jumps, but a bit more for flow trails. Did I understand correctly?
Not flow trails, but natural trails.
Natural trails.
Yeah, so you can get super steep, dirty, like, I love really steep, technical, natural riding. Like, so no, you can definitely take them to the trails. You don't have to. They're not. They're definitely designed to take a beating.
Okay.
It's just that like you might and it's not like they'll be horrible if you end up in a bike park. It's just that if you do that all day long, and get a park bike. But if you want to ride, if you want to ride all sorts of kind of trails, and you want to get out of the park, and you want to get into the woods, and you want to ride some natural, challenging terrain, and go as fast as you want, and that's exactly, they're great for that.
Well, if I can make a comparison, and stop me if I'm going too far away, it's basically the same thing that an all-road, or better, a gravel bike does with a road bike, right? So you are able with a Cotic to take whatever kind of whatever the roads, in this case the dirt road, is giving to you, or the trace is giving to you. If you want to go, if you're tired of being all day in the same bike park, you can actually take the road, something like the right road on the on the fire road, and take a natural trail, and then you're gonna be fine. Okay, that's nice. That's super nice. We actually, I didn't make it in purpose, I have to be completely sincere, but we talked a lot about mountain bikes and everything, because I have to say I'm potentially in love with this side of cycling at the moment, because it seems like for everybody it's more fun. I don't have the skills to do it, but I'm trying to get there. And the fact is that
stop down with things like that. Everyone starts from somewhere, and if you're a competent cyclist and you're having fun and you're off the road and you're on a mountain bike, who cares what your skills are? Just go and have fun. And the great thing about bikes is, the great thing about mountain biking particularly, is you're always learning. Yeah. You're always you can always be better. You could always like challenge yourself. I'm better now than I was, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I'm not as strong, I'm not as brave, but I'm better.
Yeah.
And yet my mates, there's a bunch of my mates who are still way better than me, but it doesn't bother me.
No, that's not a problem, of course.
So yeah, don't talk yourself down. Just if you're on a mountain bike and you're having fun on the trails, then that's wonderful.
That's amazing. Actually, I remember that once, it was a few years ago, I was already at the beginning of my 30s, so more or less 10 years ago, I was buying actually a skateboard. Yeah. And it was actually I usually pick up passions late in my life. Yeah. And this was a case of bicycles, because I started really riding bikes when I was at the end of my master's, so 25, 26. And now it has been almost more than 15, 16, almost 20 years that I'm doing it. But also skateboard actually came super late in my life. And then I went in a skate shop with some friend of mine sent me to get one. And then I asked the guy, I know that I'm old and it's too late for me to learn, but I would love to learn. And then the guy from the shop, super cool guy, told me, look, man, it's never too late, because even if you start late, you're already starting.
Yeah.
So it's better to start something,
absolutely,
whatever it is, because otherwise you will never start.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I actually pick up also the same tip then for my mountain bike life that hopefully is going to come. But let's talk as well a tiny bit about gravel.
Sure.
So at a certain point into your lineup, also a couple of gravel bikes arrived. Tell me more.
So what I would call the not mountain bike side of the Cotic lineup actually started of something we used to call them life bikes, because they were more for fit into your life, kind of commuting and just for everything except mountain biking kind of thing. And that started out with a flat bar road bike that was based on the Soul called the Road Rat. And that was back in 2006. So because it was this whole, similar to the thing with the Soul, I came from mountain biking onto the road. I was primarily a BMX then mountain bike. So I've never had a road tradition. I did some road for training when I was racing, but it's never been my thing. And I got a cheap road bike just for riding to work on in 2002 or 3. And I hated it. I hated the twitchy handling. I hated the crappy brakes. I hated the big gearing. I hated it. And that was aluminium as well. And jarring my teeth out on 28s. It's just like, this is rubbish. And when I went into my local bike shop, there was a pair of these wheels called Mavic Speed City. So they were mountain bike disc hubs on road rims.
Yeah.
And if you put I think I put 28s on them, but if you put 700C road tires on them, you could put them in your 26-inch mountain bike, with the disc brakes and, because of the disc brakes and all of this kind of stuff. So I got those and I put them on my Soul with a long stem and flat bars. So now I had something that handled kind of like a mountain bike, but had proper brakes, and a nice ride feel. And I was like, I love this. This is brilliant. Yeah. So the Road Rat became like a rigid 700C version of the Soul. So even back in 2006, when we introduced it, flat bar road bike, it had big clearances because I couldn't see the point of restricting the tire clearance. You could put a rack and a mudguard on it. You could single speed those at the time if you wanted to, or put a hub gear on it. And it was steel, so it rode nice. And that's where it all started. And they were really good to us for a lot. We sold a lot of those over about a 10-year period, before kind of the whole rest of the industry sort of caught up with that kind of side of things. And then a bit later on, we did a cross bike, which wasn't very successful because I didn't really understand what I was trying to do with it.
Tell me more about that. What were you trying to do with it?
Well, I didn't really understand cyclocross, so I guess I was trying to make a gravel bike, but that was before gravel, so it was it was a bit short and a bit slack for gravel, for cyclocross. I just didn't get it quite right. It was fine, but it wasn't my finest hour. So we killed that bike. That was called the X, and we killed that off because of it just wasn't selling that well. And but we realised that. But then disc brakes started coming into road. You started being able to get hydraulic and cable operated disc brakes for road levers, so you could actually put proper brakes on a road bike. So basically, what we did is we took the Road Rat, the flat bar disc brake road bike. And I shortened it. And put drop bars on it, and that was effectively the first escapade. It was basically a drop bar version of the Road Rat, but that just went. And it was a bit pre-gravel. It was back in 2014. Yeah. But it was more like an all-road bike. It was like a tough, comfortable road bike. That's what I always marketed it at. That's what I wanted it to be. Okay. And gravel kind of happened to it because we built it with such big clearances, and because we built it with this kind of quite confident, like sort of slightly slacker geometry than a full road bike. When things like we work quite closely with WTB, so when they came out with the first Horizons and Byway Road Plus stuff, the 650 by 47, well, we didn't even have to modify the bike. Literally, just went straight in, and then suddenly we thought, this is brilliant. The Horizons particularly, they've become a bit of like this sort of the orphan child of the Road Plus sort of side of things. But the WTB Horizon is a 650 by 47, tubeless, lightweight, slick. And it is a fabulous road tire. It's so comfortable.
Absolutely. I had it for so long. I think that my first gravel bike came with Horizon and the Byway.
Yeah.
I mean, the road, also the Byway are also kind of road, I have to say, because they have the knobs just on the side.
Yeah.
But actually they were exactly 47 millimeters. Oh. It was, I had friends of mine that were telling me, that's not even a bike. But for me, it was incredible. No. Go out on the road with that wheels, with that tires. Absolutely. Incredible.
It's funny, this cycling culture of that doesn't look like they've always looked like, so I'm not into that. Or you've just done that to be more comfortable, so that's not cool. It's like, why is being comfortable uncool?
Absolutely.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
That's one of the things about steel bikes, which, just to digress slightly. It's the thing about steel. People go, they're heavier and this, that, and the other. And it's like, yeah, but I guarantee you after 5 hours, I'll be fresher. I'll be more comfortable. I won't be as beaten up. I won't be begging for the ride to end. And that's, on these longer distance kind of, routes and rides, that's really important, way more so than a couple 100 grams.
No.
Anyway, so the Road Plus thing kind of happened, and suddenly, after lots of years of trying to find a niche for what the Escapade was, even though we were selling them really well because people were buying them to ride to work on and just to all of this kind of stuff, suddenly it was like, this is a gravel bike. And as soon as we were able to market it as a gravel bike and the gravel thing kind of took off, Escapade is probably our biggest selling model line. Even now we sell,
incredible.
Because they're so versatile and they're so fun, like as a road. I mean, they're a little bit more of an all-road bike than a full gravel bike. I guess now things have moved on a little bit, but you can still get 700, 600 by 50 or 650 by 50 or 700 by 44 in there, and or you can just stick 28s on it or 32s and just zip along the roads having a nice time. It's like they're that was the Escapade. But the thing about the Escapade was, when you're talking about one of the reasons why I think we've managed to do okay over the years is because that whole kernel of where I started is that I built my dream bike and then I shared it with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Was the thing that was bothering me a bit on the drop bar side was that I don't actually like riding the Escapade, because where I live, it's very mountain bikey. That's why I live here.
Where do you live, by the way? We didn't say
I live on the edge of Sheffield in the UK, so I can see the Peak District from my window.
It's in the north then.
Yeah, it's in the north. There's a lot of hills. There's a lot of grit. There's a lot of rock.
I love it.
It's wonderful for mountain biking, but as a result, a lot of the ancient rights of way escalate into mountain biking quite quickly. So even though whilst I understand the Escapade is a perfect tool for those kind of dirt roads and those sort of longer distance, kind of steadier kind of rides, it's perfect for that, or just doing a nice road ride with being comfortable. I don't like riding on the road, so I wanted a drop bar bike that was a little bit more off-road capable. And we'd stopped selling the Road Rat at this point because the market had kind of dried up for it. So we were saying, well, when we first started, and for listeners, I'm holding up my hands here.
Yeah.
We had the Soul, And then the road rat was like really close to it. It was like a really close relative to it. And now we kind of had and now like with gravel tires, like the Escapade's got a little bit more off-roady, you know, and I'm moving my hand, you know, closer to the mountain.
Close to the sole, yeah.
You know, it's a little bit more capable. But with things like 29-inch wheels and tubeless tires and long shot geometry, even the Solaris, which is our most, you know, which is effectively the Sol 29, you know, our most kind of XC hardtail, that off-road capability, that's gone over here. You know, like it's moved much. There's this great big white space in the range where there's basically a tough road bike that you can take a bit off-road, and then an unbelievably capable mountain bike, and nothing in between. And we tried all sorts of different things. I hacked up a full suspension bike with drop bars, and one of our old full suspension bikes with drop bars and 650V wheels to see whether that would be a thing. I put slicks on the long shot geometry Solaris, but that was really weird because the slack head angle and the slick kind of interacted weirdly. And we were pulling stuff out of the bit box and the spares and the old frames and just like trying all sorts of things. But the thing that actually stuck was Rich. He's just left actually, as our content creator for 10 years, 11 years. Rich pulled a pre-long shot geometry Solaris frame out of the spares box. So more trad mountain bike geometry. And he put some rigid forks on it, and he hacked some drop bars onto it, cable pull brakes, and some 29-inch wheels, some XC mountain bike tires. And he just started crashing around on that as just, he used to love just like making sort of little Frankenbikes out of the spares box. But after a couple of months, he like came in and was like, you really need to build one of these.
We have something here.
There's something here. So I did the same thing, but with a bigger sized bike. And suddenly, with what was effectively a drop bar mountain bike, I'd found the drop bar bike that I liked because I'm used to riding an enduro mountain bike with really sticky tires and all of that kind of stuff. So if you're riding along the roads on it, it's quite hard work. It's not very fun. So basically, a rigid mountain bike with drop bars and 2.2-inch XC tires, even on the road, that feels like a road bike to me. I'm zipping along and this is great. But when I get off road, I can actually ride it. I can actually have a bit of fun on the trail rather than just holding on and surviving. And the refined version of that idea is the Cascade.
That's incredible. So basically we're talking about a bit more with the Escapade, something that brings you out for long hours on the bike, on road, off road, whatever you hit is going to be fine. While with the Cascade, you have a bit more, let's say, a bit more fun version for the trails. So something that you can have for more extreme kind of terrain.
Yeah, you can definitely ride spicier off-road terrain on the Cascade. But the other thing the Cascade's got over the Escapade, because it's got a steel fork and it's got a hell of a lot more bosses and it's a lot more robust, it's also like we market it as our adventure bike. So you can put all of the racks and luggage, and our brand ambassador Abby rode it across Africa a couple of months ago. It's just one of those sort of rugged, it's a real sort of great rugged off-road tourer as well, like bike packing bike.
Escapade on the other side has rigid forks.
Pardon? Yeah, the Escapade.
Sorry, the Escapade. I made a mistake. It's carbon forks, or
the Escapade has carbon rigid forks. Whereas the Cascade has our own designed steel fork, or you can put a suspension fork. You can put a mountain bike suspension fork on it.
That's why actually my lapsus came there, because I wanted to ask you. You can also fit, if you want, a suspended fork, and the both of them are going to work, or just the Cascade does.
100 millimeter mountain bike suspension fork. So not these new like gravel 40 millimeter forks. They're too short. It's actually a proper. We put the RockShox Sid SL on it, or like a Fox 32 step cast. It's that XC racing like mountain bike fork, 100 mil travel. That's what fits on the Cascade.
Ah, that's amazing. Okay, that's super nice. So really it opens to any kind of possibility to have any kind of fun anywhere you want.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, super versatile bike, but it's become my second bike. I have a full, well, at the moment, for a lot of years, I had a Rocket Max, which is the big enduro bike, 160, 170 mil travel as my main mountain bike. But this year, I've got really into rallying little bikes. So I've got a Flare Max, which is the shorter travel, like the 125, 130 mil travel bike. That's my mountain bike. But ever since the Cascade came out, I've had the Cascade as like my second bike. It's my other bike. Because there's this whole area near me, which I found during COVID, during lockdowns, which is this beautiful quiet valley with loads of little bridleways and quiet lanes. And it's so dull and hard work on a full suspension mountain bike. But on the Cascade, it's just wonderful. It's just like the trail, like little single track trails and quiet lanes and the big views. It's wonderful. So yeah, that's my 2-bike garage.
That's amazing. I mean, it's incredible. And now I'm really keen on come over and visit you and have a couple of rides together. You're really expressing the kind of the dream rides that I can imagine. Let's go into another aspect of Cotic, and it's the community. Let's go in this way, and actually what you're doing for the community. I remember in the email that I sent you when we wanted to talk about things and everything, the thing that I actually underline is that you have a super, super, super strong community of people riding your bikes, and also you are supporting a super cool, diverse typology of riding. And the event that actually came into my mind in order to describe all of this is the Women of Steel event, I would say, that is happening, or kind of community better that is there. And this actually to show, of course, all the skill set and all the values that Cotic has in terms of the bike itself, but also what Cotic wants to represent into the cycling world in terms of community. Tell me more. What do you think actually Cotic, and what's your actually goal and perspective, and where you're putting your effort in order to nurture this community that is out there?
So the Women of Steel thing is where it all started. I mean, well, rolling back a little bit, the community around Cotic itself, because we have this thing again, we're sort of trying to be anti-exclusivity. We want to be inclusive, not exclusive. And one of the parts of that is that the Cotic Owners Club, Cotic CC, the only entry requirement is you have a Cotic. You don't need to pay us. You don't need to fill in a form. You don't even need to have bought the Cotic from us. If you ride a Cotic, you're in the Cotic CC. Simple as that. Because it's just about, that's the key thing, is that you're on a Cotic and you're having fun with your bike. And if you want to come and do some event rides with us, that would be great. And I think that builds out of the fact that we're still so small that we still have very human reactions to things where customers maybe have a little bit of trouble, or, when I hear about customers who've had, trouble with a Cotic product, even after all this time, I'm not like, just get warranty to deal with that. I'm mortified. We all are. We're just like, that's awful, and we're gutted for you, and we want to do everything we can to help. So I think the fact that we're still quite a human scale, if you catch the right day where Paul or Sam or one of the sales team aren't available, it's quite possible you could call Cotic and talk to me. I mean, I'm going to be in the showroom this afternoon. Anyone turns up this afternoon, they get to talk to me. It's like we're still a human-sized company. So I think that fosters a community feel, because people buy from people. So there's that side of it. Women of Steel really helped frame things, because when we employed our first woman, Hannah came on board to support, to do dispatch and to support the admin kind of side of things. But she wasn't a biker at all. And she got into bikes through Cotic. It's quite a funny story. She was she was just looking like around bikes on the internet about a week after she started, and she saw this competition where you took a photo of a Maxxis tire and sent it in, but a Maxxis tire on a bike, and you sent it in, you could win an entry to the Hard Rock Enduro, which is like, it's like the Glastonbury of mountain biking in the UK. It's this huge festival. She'd literally never ridden a mountain bike, and she clicked, but she had a photography degree. So she clicked a photo of one of the only bike in the office with Maxxis tire on it, won an entry.
Incredible.
So we were like, oh, so we're going to build you a bike. I'm going to teach you how to ride bikes, and then we're going to go. So that was funny. But once she got into it, she loved it, and she was instrumental in explaining to us how women interact so differently with cycling in general, but and how put off they are in general by the vibe of cycling, which I think is totally fair, to be honest. And one of the things we realised was, even though we're all sort of nice, sort of reasonable people at Cotic, and we wouldn't actively discriminate against anybody, what we realised is that actually to make the difference that we wanted to see, we actually needed to positively discriminate towards people. So if we wanted more women biking, and we wanted to make biking a safer space for women to get involved with, we actually had to build a group. We actually had to put that community in place,
and show this community as well.
And that's where Women of Steel came from. But off the back of that change of mindset, and again, I'll all credit to Richard again, who's, like I say, he's just left, but that change of mindset between myself and Richard, and on that side of things, that was how we then ended up when we were approached by Dom at Trash Free Trails when he first sort of started up. Then we were one of the first brands to support Dom when he did his big like Oregon trail ride, and we still try, we still support Trash Free Trails when we can. And we did some work with the Color Collective, and we have, one of our brand ambassadors is Asian. So, it's really important to us because that whole cliche, the cliche, because it's true, is that if you can't see it, you can't be it.
Absolutely.
So it was really important to us to have a women's group and have women in our brand ambassador program, but also, but having Jo on board, she's a Trash Free Trails A-teamer, but she's Asian. So that means that we've got someone, and Jo's amazing brand ambassador, but we're so lucky to have her, because there are so few people from ethnic minorities actually riding bikes, because they just don't see it as their thing.
Yeah.
So we and again with the environmental stuff, and and all of these things, is that for what little power we have as a brand and as a business that can communicate to the wider world, I want to use that to try and leave the world a little bit better than we found it, if possible, or certainly not any worse.
Absolutely. And that's the reason why, actually, for example, I was laughing because I'm quite joyful of saying that also Dom from Trash Free Trails was in the podcast in my mini-series talking about mountain bikes.
Yeah.
Everything comes together. And you're right. At the end of the day, the trails are what we are riding.
Yeah.
And on the other side, society is where we are living. So we need actually to give everybody of us this positive input in anything we do that talks about inclusivity, talks about sustainability, talks about so many other things. Because, that's actually where we are eating, right? So where we are living our life, where we are spending our good time together, and we're probably the people that are coming after us, they need actually to be as good as we were, or at least even better than we were in these kind of cultural positions.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have the last question for you, Sai, and is what's next? We're talking also off records of some evolutions about some bikes and something that is happening there, but also what's next for you, what's next for the brand, what's next for your activities, what's next?
The big thing after an extremely bruising couple of years dealing with supply chain issues is the big thrust for us over the next little while is much less product focused, and it's much more onshoring, bringing more production back to Europe and back to the UK. So we've already started. We've brought Solaris now is with Ford in Czech Republic, and we will probably move another model line to them in 25. We've brought all of the DropLink front triangle production into the UK, not just one of the model lines. So now all of the DropLink bikes are now made by Fiveland.
Okay.
And at the moment, we're investing in our own facility because we moved to a bigger place about 15 months ago.
Wow.
We're investing in our own facility, so we will start making one or two model lines in-house, actually.
Producing, not only assembling.
Yeah. No,
that's awesome.
The whole thing from frame to bike. We currently assemble every bike to order from a frame parts actually in our place. We don't buy bikes in boxes. We buy bits, and you have your bike built for you. You spec it exactly as you want it, and we build every single bike to order. We already do that. What we will be doing next is actually building the frames. We'll be building some, not all of them. We'll still use Fiveland. We'll still use Ford. It's only a small space, so we're only going to be doing one or two model lines. But that is the big thrust over the next. We need to have. We won't stop using Taiwan, but we need to be way, way less exposed to them and their whims and weaknesses, shall we say?
Okay, yeah.
So that's the thrust of the next. And product-wise, the only thing that's really big on the horizon for us is there will be an e-bike, an e-mountain bike,
still
within the next 12 months. Everyone knows we're working on one. We announced the prototypes some time ago. So there's still some work to be done on that. And that will be made. That'll be made in the UK. UK mostly. So so we're working on that, but that's a while away.
A little note here. Actually, the Cotic Rocket e-mountain bike, electrified. There is actually a little flash close to the name, landed earlier this year. Just go on the website, you're gonna find it. Look, Rocket, Cotic Rocket.
But yeah, like I say, the main thing is doing more of it ourselves and getting a better handle on the supply chain.
That's amazing. You were telling me also something about a new gravel bike, better a new version of a gravel bike, right? Or
we're playing around with it, but it's nothing's fixed, and certainly nothing's replacing anything. But we're looking at that space. We haven't even got anything beyond a bit of doodling on the CAD model, really, but and some chat. But the Escapade doesn't have a long enough fork to take these new 40 millimeters suspension forks, and the Cascade is a whole other thing again. So what we need to do is build a bike for one of these short forks and see whether it's actually worth doing. I'm somewhat skeptical. Having been through the 90s when we did have 40 millimeter suspension forks before, and now knowing where we've got to, I'm skeptical. But that said, I'm also going to be open-minded about it, because just being grumpy engineer about it and that'll never work without actually speaking from a position of experience or knowledge is not the way to go about things. So we will almost certainly play around with something in that space, but whether it becomes a product or not depends on whether we think it's worth doing or not.
Okay, makes sense. Well, Sai, thanks a lot then. It was an amazing chat. It's always super great to know more about new brands on the space that are actually carrying in new values and interesting points of view on cycling. And you made it super perfectly with the you have been doing it and you're still doing it super perfectly with Cotic. So it's incredible to hear this kind of stories from your own voice.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad it was. I'm glad it felt relevant.
Absolutely. It was super incredible. Thanks a lot again, Sai. And let's talk soon.
Sure thing.
Thanks a lot, Sai, for the amazing talk we got today. I mean, this happened probably in February this year, but I wanted to finish the season with this one. It was already everything in a plan. I think it's the best wish for everybody to know a bit more about the story of super nice brands that have sustainability and inclusion in their main value portfolio. And fun. I mean, Sai said it so many times. Go out, ride your bike, and have fun. That's what I'm intending you also, people. We're gonna talk in a couple of weeks, maybe 3, but for now, even if it's cold, even if you want just to ride inside, go out, stay home, but ride a bike and have fun. Talk to you later. Enjoy your Christmas time.